My quiet Saturday morning was brutally interrupted by my mother-in-law's cheerful announcement. Her entire family was moving in, and by the end of the day, I would have to choose between my home and my marriage. The first sign of trouble came on a Saturday morning, disguised as a cheerful phone call from my mother-in-law, Carol. I was nursing a cup of coffee, enjoying the rare quiet in the house my husband, Mark, and I had worked ourselves to the bone for. It was our sanctuary, a testament to years of saving, sacrificing, and dreaming. Every corner, from the reclaimed wood floors to the custom-built bookshelves in my home office, was a piece of us. "Honey, how are you?" Carol's voice was syrupy sweet, a tone that usually preceded a favor. I braced myself. "I'm good, Carol. Just enjoying a quiet morning. How are you?" "Oh, I'm just fine, dear. Listen, I have the most wonderful news. We've figured out a solution for Jessica's little problem." Jessica was Mark's younger sister. Her little problem was that her husband had been laid off, and after months of draining their savings, they were being evicted from their apartment. It was a terrible situation, and we'd already offered them financial help, which they'd proudly refused. "That's great," I said, genuinely relieved. "What's the solution?" There was a brief pause, filled with what I now recognize as the sound of a steamroller revving its engine. "Well, they're going to come stay with you and Mark for a while. Isn't that perfect?" I nearly dropped my coffee mug. The ceramic clattered against the granite countertop as I tried to process what she'd said. She hadn't asked. She had announced. "Stay with us?" I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. "Carol, what are you talking about?" "It's all decided," she said, her voice brimming with a terrifying level of confidence. "They'll pack up this weekend and can be there by Tuesday. It will just be for a few months, 6 at the most, until they get back on their feet. It's the least we can do as a family." My mind raced. Jessica, her husband Tom, their moody 14-year-old son, and their rambunctious 7-year-old daughter. 4 people in our 3-bedroom house. One of those bedrooms was my office, the hub of my freelance graphic design business. The other was our guest room, currently set up for my own parents who visited twice a year. "Carol," I said, trying to keep my voice even, "I don't think that's going to work. We don't have the space. They're a family of 4. "Oh, don't be silly," she chuckled, a dismissive, airy sound. "The boys can share the guest room and Jessica and Tom can take your office. You can work at the dining room table, can't you? It's all about compromise, dear." The sheer audacity of it left me speechless. She had not only decided they would live with us, but she had also rearranged my home and my career in her mind without a single thought for my opinion. This house wasn't just Mark's house, it was our house. I paid half the mortgage, and my income was what allowed us the little luxuries we had. My office wasn't a hobby room, it was my livelihood. "No," I finally managed to say, the word tasting like metal in my mouth. "That is not going to happen." The sweetness in her voice instantly evaporated, replaced by a chilling frost. "What do you mean, no? This is your husband's family. They are in trouble. Are you really going to turn them out onto the street?" And there it was, the guilt trip. The manipulation polished to a high sheen from years of practice. I took a deep breath. "Of course not. We've offered them money, which they refused. We can help them find a short-term rental and co-sign the lease. There are other options. But moving their entire family into our home for half a year is not one of them." Before she could respond, I heard Mark's keys in the door. He was back from his morning run. "I need to discuss this with Mark," I told her, my voice firm. "This is a major decision, and it's not one you get to make for us." "Fine," she snapped. "Talk to my son. He knows what the right thing to do is." And she hung up. Mark walked in, flushed and smiling, but his smile faded when he saw my face. I explained the conversation, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and disbelief. He listened, his expression growing more and more troubled. "She's just worried, honey," he said, running a hand through his sweaty hair. "She's trying to solve a problem." "By blowing up our lives, Mark? By moving 4 people into our home without even asking? She planned to have them sleep in my office, the place I work 10 hours a day to help pay for this very house." Okay. The office thing is too much. I agree," he conceded. "But maybe we can make the guest room work? Just for a little while?" I stared at him, my heart sinking. "Mark, you can't be serious. A little while. She said 6 months. Where do my parents stay when they visit? Where do I work when I have a deadline and need quiet? Our lives would be turned completely upside down." The argument went on for an hour. It was our first real foundation-shaking fight in years. He accused me of being selfish. I accused him of not having a backbone when it came to his mother. Finally, frustrated and getting nowhere, he grabbed his car keys. "I'm going for a drive. I need to clear my head." I watched him leave, a knot of dread tightening in my stomach. I felt alone, cornered. I spent the next hour pacing the living room, my mind a whirlwind of what-ifs. What if Mark sided with her completely? What if they just showed up? The thought was so absurd I almost laughed. Surely they wouldn't. Not even Carol was that brazen. Then the doorbell rang. My heart leaped into my throat. It was too soon for Mark to be back. I walked to the door, my hands clammy. I peered through the peephole and my blood ran cold. On my doorstep stood Carol, a triumphant smirk plastered on her face. Behind her stood a defeated-looking Jessica and Tom, and beside them, like a mountain range of impending doom, were 3 large suitcases, 2 duffel bags, and a tower of cardboard boxes. I swung the door open, my mouth agape, unable to form a single word. Carol's smirk widened. She gestured grandly at the pile of luggage. "Well," she announced to the quiet, tree-lined street, "don't just stand there gawking. Help your family with their bags. We're moving in." For a moment, the world seemed to freeze. The chirping of a bird in the oak tree, the distant hum of a lawnmower, my own heartbeat, it all faded into a dull roar in my ears. I stood there in the doorway, a human barrier between my sanctuary and this invading army, led by the smiling general herself. My voice, when I finally found it, was shockingly calm. "No," I said. It was a simple word, but I loaded it with all the steel I could find in my spine. "No, you are not." Carol's smile didn't falter, but her eyes hardened. "Don't be ridiculous, dear. It's decided. Now, are you going to help or just stand there?" I ignored her and looked directly at Jessica, whose face was pale and blotchy, her eyes fixed on a crack in the pavement. Tom, her husband, stood behind her, looking just as miserable, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "Jessica," I said, my voice softening slightly, "I am truly sorry for what you're going through. You know Mark and I want to help, but this is not the way. You cannot move your family into our house." Before Jessica could even muster a response, Carol stepped forward, her voice rising in pitch and volume, clearly intended for any neighbors who might be listening. "How dare you speak to her like that? This is my son's house, too. He has a say in who stays here. Are you really so heartless that you'd make these poor children sleep on the curb?" As if on cue, her 7-year-old granddaughter looked up at me with wide, confused eyes, and my stomach twisted. This was Carol's masterpiece of manipulation, and she was using her own grandchildren as props. Right then, a familiar engine sound made my heart both leap and plummet. Mark's car was turning into our driveway. He pulled in behind Tom's beat-up sedan, cutting the engine and staring at the surreal tableau on his front lawn. His wife in a standoff with his entire family, who were surrounded by what looked like the entire contents of their old apartment. He got out of the car, his face a mask of confusion. "Mom, what is all this? I was on my way to your house to talk." Carol immediately turned on the waterworks, her face crumbling into a mask of theatrical sorrow. "Mark, thank God. Your wife. She's trying to throw us out. After you said it was okay." The lie was so blatant, so audacious, it took my breath away. Mark looked from his sobbing mother to me, his eyes wide with panic. I didn't say that. I said we needed to discuss it." I just stared at him, my silence a screaming demand. "Back me up. For once in your life, stand with me against her. Choose me. Choose us." "Look," he said, waving his hands helplessly. Can everyone please come inside so we can talk about this like adults? It's cold out here." This was it, the moment of truth. If they came inside, it was over. Possession is 9/10 of the law, and Carol knew it. Once her bags were in my hall, they might as well be cemented to the floor. "No," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "They are not setting one foot in this house, Mark. Not with their luggage. We decide this right here, right now. You either tell them they can't stay, or you and I have a much bigger problem than your sister's living situation." The ultimatum hung in the air, sharp and heavy. Mark looked like he was going to be physically sick. He ran a hand over his face, his gaze darting between me and his family. He looked at Jessica, who was now openly crying, and at his little niece, who had started to shiver. "Honey, please," he begged, his voice cracking. "Just for tonight. Let them come in for one night. We'll book them a hotel tomorrow, I promise. We can't just leave them out here." "One night becomes 1 week, which becomes 6 months," I said, my heart breaking. He wasn't getting it. He wasn't seeing the checkmate move his mother had just played. "This is not about tonight, Mark. It's about a boundary. It's about our life." Carol saw her opening. She placed a hand on Mark's arm, her voice a syrupy whisper. "Mark, darling, just grab that first box for your poor sister. Let's get the children inside where it's warm. We can talk after." He looked at me, his eyes pleading for me to give in, to save him from this impossible choice. I gave him nothing. My face was granite. I had drawn a line in the sand, and I was fully prepared to watch him cross it. He hesitated for a long, agonizing moment. The entire world seemed to hold its breath. Then, with a sigh of resignation that felt like a nail in the coffin of our marriage, he turned away from me. He bent down and wrapped his hands around the handles of a heavy cardboard box labeled "Kitchen." He lifted it. He took a step towards the open door where I stood. His eyes met mine, filled with an apology that felt more like a betrayal than any angry word ever could. He was choosing them. He was breaking the boundary. He was letting them in. And as he took another step forward, forcing me to move aside or be run over, a cold, terrifying clarity washed over me. I finally understood what I had to do. As Mark took that final, fateful step, forcing me to move aside, a strange calm settled over me. The anger, the panic, the betrayal, it all receded, replaced by a crystalline, cold purpose. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I simply stepped back and watched as he grunted, setting the heavy box down in the middle of my pristine entryway. "There," Carol said, beaming, clapping her hands together as if he'd just won an Olympic medal. "That wasn't so hard, was it? Now let's get the rest." Mark wouldn't look at me. He turned back towards the door, his shoulders hunched, a prisoner of his own making. But before he could take another step, I spoke. "Stop," I said. My voice was level, almost conversational, yet it cut through the air and stopped everyone in their tracks. Mark froze with his hand on the doorknob. He slowly turned to face me. "Honey, what—" "You made your choice, Mark," I said, my eyes locked on his. "You chose them. You chose this. So this is your house now." A flicker of confusion crossed his face. Carol scoffed. "Of course it's his house, you silly girl. It's your house, too." "Not anymore," I said, still looking only at Mark. "While you were out clearing your head, I was making a contingency plan. I had a feeling it might come to this. I held up my phone. I've booked a suite at an extended stay hotel downtown. It's already paid for the next month. The color drained from Mark's face. Jessica and Tom just stared, mouths slightly agape. Only Carol looked angry. You're leaving. You're abandoning your husband because he wanted to help his family? No, I corrected her gently, a small, sad smile playing on my lips. I am leaving because my husband allowed his mother to make a decision that fundamentally alters our lives and our home without my consent. I am leaving because he just demonstrated that when I draw a boundary to protect our marriage, he will cross it if his mother applies enough pressure. I turned and walked calmly up the stairs, the sound of my footsteps echoing in the stunned silence. I could hear Carol begin to hiss something at Mark, but I ignored it. I went into my office, my former office, and grabbed my laptop bag, which already had my work essentials packed. Then I went into our bedroom, took my pre-packed duffel bag from the closet, and walked back down. They were all standing exactly where I'd left them, like statues in a bizarre family drama. I walked over to Mark, who looked utterly broken. "This is your family, so this is your responsibility," I said, my voice soft but unyielding. "You figure out the sleeping arrangements. You figure out the extra groceries, the higher utility bills, the complete lack of privacy. You can explain to my parents why they can't come for Christmas this year." I paused, letting the weight of it all sink in. "My half of the mortgage payment will be transferred to your account on the 1st. As always, I will honor my financial commitment to this house. But the rest of my income, the part that pays for our dinners out, our vacations, the Netflix subscription, the nice groceries that's coming with me, I'll need it for the hotel. You and your 4 new house guests are on your own for everything else." The reality of the situation finally slammed into him. It wasn't just about sharing space, it was about the collapse of the entire life we had built together. His eyes, wide and pleading, were full of tears. "No, wait, please, don't do this." He reached for me, but I stepped back. "Tell your mother to go home, Mark," I said. "Tell them all to go." It was as if I'd flipped a switch. He spun around to face his mother, and for the first time in his life, I saw real, untethered rage in his eyes. "Get out," he snarled at her. "Get out of this house, now." Carol was flabbergasted. "Mark, how dare you, after all You did this," he roared, pointing a trembling finger at her. "You never listen. You always push and push until everything breaks. Well, you just broke my marriage. So get out. Take them and go." He then turned to his sister. "Jess, I am so sorry," he said, his voice cracking with emotion. "I will call you tomorrow. I will write you a check for first and last month's rent on any apartment you can find. I will pay your moving expenses. I will help you. But you cannot stay here. You have to leave." The whole chaotic scene reversed itself. Defeated, humiliated, and under the force of Mark's newfound fury, they began loading their boxes and bags back into their car. Carol shot me a look of pure hatred as she left, but I just stood there, my hand on the doorknob, feeling nothing but a profound sense of relief. When they were gone, Mark closed the door and slid down against it, burying his face in his hands, his body shaking with sobs. I didn't go to him. I just stood there with my bags. That night, I still went to the hotel. He begged me to stay, but I told him I needed him to understand what he had almost lost. He had to sit in that silent house alone and feel the full weight of his choice. We spent the next month apart. He called every day. We met for dinner. He started therapy on his own. He set up a direct payment plan to help his sister, creating a boundary that was supportive yet firm. He admitted he'd spent his whole life being afraid of his mother's disapproval, and he was done. When I finally came home, it was to a different man. The house was the same, but our foundation was new. It's been 6 months now. Jessica and her family are in a new place and getting back on their feet, with our help offered on our terms. Carol barely speaks to us, which is a blessing. And Mark? He's become the partner I always knew he could be, the one who finally learned that the family you choose must always come first. Our home is our sanctuary again, but this time, the walls are built of more than wood and plaster. They're reinforced with respect.